I'm here today with Liz Berthelette. Liz is the Director of Research at NAI Hunneman here in Boston. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Yeah, things are exciting. I mean, there's an awful lot happening. I'm reading all of your trends and your quarterly reports and whatnot, and things are really happening and very exciting in Boston right now.
Yeah, the market is still hot. You know, there's a lot going on, especially downtown. We've seen a lot of large commitments recently in the Seaport and somewhat surprisingly in the Back Bay. We've seen, Wayfair expanding. John Hancock is bringing all of their employees back from the Seaport. DraftKings is moving in. So there's
all happening in the Back Bay.
Yeah, there's really been a lot of momentum in a submarket where 18 to 24 months ago, all the tech companies didn't find it cool enough to be there.
Well, I was going to ask you why do you see that trend? Because as you said, a while ago, no one wanted to be there, and now it's fashionable again.
Well, I think, Wayfair wants to stay where they are. They like that market. They're looking for supposedly 1 million square feet. They're going to hire 10,000 people. And I think there's just some momentum going on in that marketplace where we're seeing tech everywhere, and it's finally starting to come to the Back Bay.
Yeah, it's amazing the number of companies that are coming into Boston that are either already here in Boston or coming here, and the amount of employment that these new companies are just the growth has been phenomenal.
Right. I mean, Amazon's bringing a couple thousand more people, not including their HQ2 requirement. You have Mass Mutual moving in from Connecticut, Alexion moving in from Connecticut, PTC is coming in from Newton. So it's really been sort of this migration to the urban core that we've seen this cycle.
So let me ask you, I mean, every company, and I deal with a lot of all of you professionals. How do you differentiate yourself? I mean, there's a lot of market research. How do you separate yourself in terms of culling out and getting to the real meat of the story?
Yeah. So NAI Hunneman, we're the largest sort of privately owned full service platform firm in the city. Right. We're just an affiliate of NAI Global, and we're not corporately owned, sort of like our counterparts at Colliers and CB and all that. So we're sort of, I would say, we're bootstrapping. I have an analyst. He calls and gets all the information for me. He's, touring the market, looking for data. So we're in it. We're in the trenches.
You're right in the trenches, because
yeah.
There is just so much happening. It must just be really difficult, and you do a phenomenal job at sort of synthesizing it all and getting it out. So.
Yeah, and I would say reading every morning. I usually read the news for about an hour,
right.
Making sure we're keeping track of what's going on, looking at all the news sources, and sort of keeping up with everything that's coming out throughout the day. And social media, I learned so much on Twitter that doesn't make it to the mainstream news sources that it's just sort of amazing.
Yeah. So let me ask you, I mean, I know you're very focused on obviously the Boston market, but what other markets do you see right now? I'm sure you guys are talking, let's talk about some of the other maybe hot markets that you track.
Well, within Greater Boston, I mean, Cambridge, you can't talk about Greater Boston without talking about Cambridge, the life science market. I mean, it's just so tight in that market. It's been a really big growth driver for Cambridge. And you have all of these pharmaceutical companies and life science companies trying to get into this market, and there's just no space. So then you're seeing that growth sort of spread out.
Start to expand out.
Yeah, you've got Waltham and Watertown and Bedford, and you're even seeing like King Street Properties is building, a biomanufacturing facility in Framingham now.
I'm familiar with it.
And
in fact, I was out there the other day.
Right, yeah. And Astellas Pharmaceuticals is building a facility in Westboro, so there's just a lot of growth in that marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. You mentioned the prior towns. You go out the Route 2 corridor, and it's just, the amount of activity and movement that's gone out there is just, I mean, it's always been a great, corridor, but it's just, everybody's being pushed out of the Cambridge market right now.
And I think you'll continue to see that over the long run, because you get a lot of, people that work at the university or they work in Cambridge, and where do they go when they grow up and want a house? Out Route 2, because it's a straight shot to kind of get back to where they work and where they're, where they need to be every day.
Sure. And where are you seeing rents? Are they leveling off? Are they still spiking? What's your overall?
So overall for the office market, we're kind of getting to that mature part of the cycle where we're not going to see as much growth. going forward. We're still seeing rents increase, but it's at a slower pace than what we saw a couple of years ago. And I would say, that's pretty standard for kind of where we are getting into the cycle.
Right. Now, we were talking earlier, as I mentioned, I'm developing in the town of Canton, which is pretty close, and there are some exciting things potentially happening over there. What do you see in the Canton area?
Yeah, I would say the most exciting thing is the former Reebok headquarters. Yep. It's 680,000 square feet. Reebok has since moved their headquarters to the Seaport and left this huge building, this campus with a tennis court and a fitness facility, a really great campus from what I understand. Vacant.
I know it very well, as
Yeah.
I mentioned to you. I lived in Canton for 40 years, and it's a unique building. It's absolutely spectacular, the whole campus. And there are so many adaptive uses, potential uses for the property.
Right. I'm excited to see what the new owner, Spear Street Capital, does with the property. Are they going to land a single office user? Are they going to try to redevelop it into more of a live, work, play lifestyle center? So it'll be really interesting to see, who goes in there, if there's going to be retail, will there be a housing component,
Right.
or maybe they'll find, that big user that they need.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I know it's there's certainly a lot of activity around it right now, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens over there. Yeah. So coming back into the city, let's talk about the Seaport. Okay.
Yeah.
You can't really talk about the growth in Boston without talking about the Seaport district. I remember years ago, literally, I was driving. I went into the airport last night, and I was driving through, and I couldn't help but think, 15 years. I don't know what the exact time frame is, but you may not remember it, but we used to actually park cars out there.
Yes.
Okay, it was no man's land, and people would walk over to the financial district and whatnot. And now it's literally, by most standards, it's bigger than many cities in the United States. Just that section of
Right.
Boston in and of itself.
Well, the transformation of the Seaport has been something I think is most remarkable for the city of Boston. And I will tell you, a broker that I used to work with, Jeff Becker, I don't know if you
Sure,
know him,
no.
he made mention that you knew who used to park over there because their shoes would be dirty.
From
the lots.
From the lots. Yeah.
So that's an interesting historical tidbit about the Seaport. But my office is right in Fort Point,
Yep.
so I have seen the transformation over the last 2.5, 3 years, and it's astounding the amount of construction that's going on in Seaport Square. The fact that all of the brick and beam buildings in Fort Point are now considered institutional quality product
Absolutely.
when
Yep.
they were more so your Class B or your creative workspace for the artists that were over in that area. But you have Class A housing, Class A retail amenities. Amazon is building a 450,000 square foot office in Seaport Square, and it's just amazing how much is actually down there.
And as you know, with all of that growth, along comes retail and restaurants,
Right.
and it just the businesses that are surround all of that growth. I just think it's such a dynamic part of the city, and it's just a phenomenal place to live these days.
Right. There's a lot of traffic. I will tell
There is
you
a
that.
lot of traffic.
There's a lot of traffic, but I think, the city and the public-private partnerships are going to work to figure out what the solution will be. Who knows what it'll be, a bus, a gondola, Silver Line, all that. But it's definitely a very dynamic market right now.
Right, absolutely. Now, you were telling me earlier you have your Q1 report coming out.
Yep, tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'd encourage.
Knock on wood.
I'd encourage people to go online and take a look at it.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sure it's full of tons of good information.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Liz, thank you very much for coming on. This has been very informative. I would encourage people to come online, look at Liz's Q1 report, because it's going to be loaded with great data, and we look forward to having you back on.
Great. Thank you for having me. This has been a great opportunity.